Hi, this is Christopher, the Bronze Age Nerd, and thank you for watching another video. In today's video, I want to tackle a topic that has had a ton of attention on it, and I want to take a slightly different angle. I want to tackle the first appearance controversy in comics. There is no doubt that the discussion around what is a first appearance and what isn't a first appearance has definitely changed how we as comic collectors, comic investors, speculators, and fans view the comic collecting hobby. But the very way that comic books are written and the way that they're released has led to this not being a cut and dry topic. For example, a lot of times a brand new comic book will come out featuring a brand new character, and that'll happen to be the very first time that they ever appear in a comic book. Maybe they're on the cover, they appear throughout the comic book, they're addressed by name. Very obviously, that's their first appearance in comics. But often characters are created and then they're introduced in sort of a teaser type setting. It's sort of like a teaser trailer for a big movie coming out. And sometimes what'll happen is they'll appear like at the very end of an issue, right before they show up in the next issue. Kind of like a soap opera might introduce a character at the very end of an episode before focusing on that character the next time. Comic books are not that different. So there are different opinions on what constitutes a character's first appearance, and spoiler alert, I am not going to attempt to solve that mystery today. Most importantly, I want to cover this topic from two different angles. The first angle is from a comic fan or a comic collector perspective, and the second angle is from an investor or speculator perspective. It's important to point out that sometimes somebody is both a fan and a collector and an investor and a speculator, and there's some crossover there. But just understand as I make this video that those are the two kind of camps that I'm going to address as we talk about these various examples. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to look at three popular examples of X-Men characters and the two issues that might be considered their first appearance, depending on how you look at things and the nomenclature you want to use. And so we'll look at it from that fan perspective, and we'll also look at it from what might be more important as an investor or a speculator to invest into. So we're going to start off with the most famous example of this controversy. We're going to start off with the character Wolverine and his first appearance. Now, the interesting thing about Incredible Hulk 180, if you're familiar with the issue at all, is he appears on the last panel of the comic book. He does introduce himself by name, and it's very visible to anybody familiar with the character of Wolverine that that is Wolverine. But most people would put their money on Incredible Hulk 181 as being the more important book to own. Wolverine appears not only on the cover of the comic book, but throughout the entire comic book. He has a huge fight with Wendigo and the Hulk, and it's just an amazing comic book. You definitely should go and read it if you haven't read it. But more to the point, those two issues are the first appearance story of Wolverine. A first appearance like the one that happens in Incredible Hulk 180 is something called a cameo. And a cameo is basically a brief appearance to set up a character or to allude to their importance to a greater story. That's not the dictionary definition. I'll probably throw that up on the screen here if you're interested in what that is. But basically, it's an introduction to that character, but it's not necessarily what many collectors would call a full appearance. But essentially, most people will view Incredible Hulk 180 as the first appearance of Wolverine in cameo, and most people refer to Incredible Hulk 181 as the first full appearance of Wolverine. There are some people that will refer to Hulk 180 as the first appearance of Wolverine and Hulk 181 as the second appearance of Wolverine. And I think both camps are right. How can that be true? Well, Wolverine appears on that last panel of Hulk 180, right? So that's the first time he appears in a comic book. That's his first appearance. I have to say that's my opinion, because even though logically looking at all those words, that's what they mean, people still interpret that differently. And by the way, that's fine. If you value Hulk 181 as the more valuable first appearance of Wolverine, I totally understand, and I respect that. In fact, I would probably prefer to own a copy of Hulk 181 over a copy of Hulk 180 myself, so I get it from that perspective. But basically at this point, we're going to get bogged down in the argument between the two camps of what book matters. So let's dial it down a little bit and look at what should matter if you're a fan or a collector, whatever you want to call yourself, or if you're an investor or a speculator. Again, there can be some crossover between those categories, but for the sake of this video, let's assume that there's two different things there, and you'll have to ask yourself which one matters more to you. So first, I want to talk to you as the fan or the comic book collector. Let's just say this is somebody who's only interested in the character of Wolverine and just wants to own a piece of that history. Well, you know what? Here you have some options. You get to ask yourself some important questions like, what matters to you the most? For a lot of less expensive key comics, I might recommend trying to collect every cameo and first full appearance if you're a fan or a collector, but these are expensive comics, and even Hulk 180 has become pretty expensive these days. So if you have to pick one or the other, I really think what you should do, my recommendation would be to try to find reprints or to buy digitally either copy of the comic, read them, and find out what the impact to you is as a fan. Do you care more about that last panel in Hulk 180, or do you care more about the story and the cover of everything that happens in Hulk 181? There's no right or wrong answer, but whatever you decide, I would say that's the book you should probably go for in this particular example, since they're both pretty expensive. If you have a really high budget for comic books and you can afford both, I would definitely recommend getting both. Most importantly, don't care what anybody else tells you about the first appearance of Wolverine. If you're somebody who thinks that Hulk 180 is the more important book to own, that's completely your opinion. That's fair, and anybody that tells you otherwise is full of it. I would not listen to him at all. And likewise, the same thing's true if you value Hulk 181 more over Hulk 180. Every other person's opinion doesn't matter as a fan or a collector, because what matters is your experience with that comic book. The only exception here is some collectors collect things that are valuable, and they don't necessarily collect things that they love. They collect things that they think are cool or valuable, and that's also totally valid. In that case, you might want to pay more attention to what I explained for the scenario if I was an investor or a speculator looking at Hulk 181 or Hulk 180. If you're more in the financial aspect of wanting to invest in this comic book or hold on to it for when Wolverine is announced for the official MCU appearance and sell it to try to make some money to do whatever you want, buy more comics, whatever, then it becomes a little bit different. I think there's two different things you should look at. The first is you should ask yourself, which one are you more able to attain? Because I think both will spike when we finally get a trailer or some kind of surprise reveal of Wolverine inside the MCU. I think that at this point, the momentum is behind Hulk 181, and it's definitely the more desirable book to own, in my opinion. However, I think Hulk 180 is more attainable. It's a little bit cheaper, and that means it's probably going to be a little bit easier for you to grab a copy or maybe two and hold on to those. I think you have to think about psychology a little bit of people that would be your buyers, and that is kind of the crux of the issue here, is why do people place the value on Hulk 181 over Hulk 180 currently, at least? And it's hard to say. It's hard to say if people historically weren't quite as aware that Hulk 180 featured that cameo appearance, and so the value for Hulk 181 just kind of leapt out in front. And since it was the more valuable book, that's what people would chase. And that's just kind of had a snowball effect as time has gone on. Or maybe people really do value the story in Hulk 181 more because he does appear throughout the story. He gets to fight both Hulk and Wendigo. But I think this establishes a good baseline for what we're talking about when it comes to first appearances of characters. All right, so let's move on to our second example. And in our second example, we're going to talk about the first appearance of another fan favorite X-Men, and that's Bishop. So Bishop, same deal, right? He has his first cameo appearance in Uncanny X-Men 282 and his first full appearance in Uncanny X-Men 283. So clearly Uncanny X-Men 283 is the book that you should go. Wait, no, it's not. Uncanny X-Men 282 has a way higher FMV than Uncanny X-Men 283. What's going on here? Bishop appears on the cover of Uncanny X-Men 282. And he also has that cameo appearance at the end, very similar to Hulk 180 with Wolverine. However, undeniably, he appears throughout the issue in a much more similar manner to Wolverine and Hulk 181 in Uncanny X-Men 282. So in other words, the market has basically switched the scenario here, with one variable being different, is that Bishop appears on the cover of 282. So when you're thinking about first appearances as a investor or a speculator, cover appearances do seem to play a pretty big factor. So as an investor or speculator currently, you would definitely want to go after 282 as the issue to own. However, here's where I think things could get a little tricky. I think the case for 283 is slowly building some steam. I think people are kind of more and more aware that that is his first full appearance, and for most other characters, we do value the first full appearance more than like a first cameo or a first cover appearance alone. So that's the thing. I recently picked up several extra copies of Uncanny X-Men 283 to hold on to because they're definitely more attainable, and I think that there's more legs for that book to grow. Both books are reasonably still affordable. You might be able to go out and find a high grade raw of both for what I think most modern comic book collectors are willing to spend. And that's not true for everybody. I know there's plenty of people out there that are on a much tighter budget, but I'm speaking kind of generally here. And I think this is a case where you might want to go after both books. And as a fan or just a pure fan collector, that's kind of the similar situation I would advise. Unless you feel strongly about one book over the other and you only want to own one of them, they're both pretty affordable. And to own both the kind of the main story arc that introduces the coming of Bishop, so to speak, I think that's really an important point. And for the most part, he's the last major X-Men to get introduced after, like, say, Gambit, for example. All right, so speaking of Gambit, this is a tricky, fun one. So let's talk about our third example, and that is the first appearance of Gambit in comics. So up until fairly recently, the book to own for Gambit was Uncanny X-Men 266. It's just a slam dunk investment. And it's a hot book right now. It's been heating up over the last year and a half, and you definitely have been seeing the prices go up if you watch that book at all. And you know what? This is one of those sort of like typical situations that you look for as a comic book collector, because he appears on the cover, albeit in a slightly different costume, but he still appears on the cover, thong and all. And he appears throughout the entirety of the comic book. It's a great story with him partnering up with Storm. So it's definitely... Yeah, that's the first appearance of Gambit in comics, right? Right? Okay, let's talk about Uncanny X-Men Annual 14. With us tracking and cataloging and having databases for release dates on comics and all this kind of stuff, the information was out there, and you could see that for whatever reason, Uncanny X-Men Annual 14 did hit shelves before X-Men 266. The argument that I hear the most is Uncanny X-Men Annual 14 is a cameo. This is the Hulk 180 to Gambit's first appearance. There's no doubt if you read that story, this is a character they don't introduce at all. It's very much like he's already there, part of the story, but he is part of the story. He appears several times throughout that comic book. He has many word balloons on a page and a half. I think over 10. I'll kind of try to throw up a graphic showing how many there are. I think some people even miss a few of them that are very clearly Gambit talking because of who else is in the room with them. You can tell who it is. And yeah, he's throughout that comic book. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say he's the main character of that comic book. That's just not true. But if he wasn't there, that page wouldn't make any sense. You'd have to replace that page with something else. And there's sort of an argument that a first full appearance, that character must be integral to the story, so that if they were omitted, the story wouldn't make any sense. And if you cut out Gambit from that comic book, there's definitely a page and a half there that wouldn't make any sense at all. And he appears on other panels besides that page and a half. So this is a really interesting situation. Now, as a fan and a collector, I'm glad I own both books and I'm not in this boat of having to decide. I think as a character, Uncanny X-Men 266 is a much more important first early appearance of Gambit book. I almost said first appearance, but you do have to understand, this is a book where I feel like X-Men Annual 14 has slowly been picking up steam, and it's not a cheap book anymore. And there are people that would like to call it the first full appearance of Gambit. So this is that same situation where I kind of advise, if you're only going to invest in one book or the other, definitely kind of look into what you value as a collector. Maybe read both comics again digitally or a reprint or something like that, and try to see what you think is more important for you as the collector of a Gambit appearance. As an investor, as a speculator, this is one of those ones where I might caution you to maybe move towards X-Men Annual 14, because I think it is picking up some steam, and I think it will continue to show some value. It's also a square-bound comic, so if you happen to find a copy that's in really good shape and that square binding is really solid, that's going to be a little bit more rare and something you might want to consider. What I will say is that as far as covers go, it's a pretty meh cover for X-Men Annual 14, whereas the cover for 266 has become pretty popular at this point. And I definitely think that is going to make a big difference in the value for these comics. I don't see Annual 14 ever surpassing X-Men 266, but I think it's important to keep in mind that both comics have some value at this point. All right, so that's basically my recap of these 3 appearances, and kind of more than anything, I want this to be a thought experiment. I want you to sort of just sit there and think about first appearances a little bit more logically, try to break it down and try to look at the actual evidence instead of just taking what everybody assumes to be the case, especially if you're a fan or a collector. However, if you're an investor or a speculator, you have to keep in mind that the masses are going to be your customers if you ever go to sell this book, and what they think does matter. But the other lesson here is that the public opinion about what a first appearance is does shift over time. Again, we've started to see Uncanny X-Men Annual 14, we've started to see Hulk 180, both become more valuable. I assume Uncanny X-Men 283 is going to follow that suit as people start basically snatching up all the copies of 282, and that's starting to happen now. If I was at a shop and they had a 282 and a 283 next to each other, I'd grab both if I could afford to do so. So I'm really curious. Go ahead and let me know in the comments below what you think about first appearances and what you think about it either as a collector or as an investor. I definitely look forward to talking to you guys about this down in the comments below. As a reminder, I do have a Ko-fi if you want to donate to support this channel. If you do decide to donate to this channel, just know that that is going to go towards improving my video quality, improving my lighting, improving my sound, all those sorts of things to deliver better content to you. So that's completely up to you, but I do appreciate those that have chose to donate. Thank you very much. I appreciate you watching. And as always, I want to remind you, hey, read comics every day.